Hello, everybody. It's Cindy Ingram. And before I start with my word of the year update, number two, I I'm gonna whine the fact that I did this whole recording with no audio, and then I did about 5 minutes of the recording without having clicked record the second time I tried. So this is take number three. We're gonna do this right this time. I'm not gonna go on Facebook Live for this one because I'm scared of the audio thing that happened. So I'm just gonna upload this video onto Facebook. I'll also put this up on the podcast. So if you're listening and you want to watch, head over to Facebook. If you're watching and want to listen, head over to the podcast Art and Self with Cindy Ingram on any of your podcast players. So today my word of the year is artist. And in last week's update, I gave you sort of a backstory on why I chose that word and what it means to me to call myself an artist and how it feels really uncomfortable to call myself an artist. And to keep myself really engaged in that word of the year for the whole year, my plan is to do these weekly updates, weekly-ish. The last one was on a Tuesday. Today's a Thursday. It's really going to be inconsistent. So apologies if you like consistency of time and date. That's not something I can do right now. And I had this whole thing about what I was going to talk about, which was this art journal page I made and like how I started and how it ended and how that was about the creative process. But I will talk about that, I'm sure another day. But what is more pressing, that feels like it really impacted my week this week, is how artists manage their moods and how important rest and rejuvenation and self-care is to artists if they are going to continue creating, continue to have longevity as an artist, continue to keep their creativity without forcing it, all of that. So what happened with me is last week I was on fire. I just recently had COVID. I finally was feeling better. My family was back, the kids were back at school. Everybody was kind of okay. And I was really loving my work. I was writing this chapter in my book that compares my burnout to the artwork from the movie poster for Jaws. And I was having such a blast with that. Like all the ocean metaphors and things are just giving me life. I was having so much fun. I was having so much fun coaching, and all the things that I do with my work. And then over the weekend, it's like I had a real a switch flipped, and I went from being so happy and joyful and excited to feeling really down, depressed, incredibly low energy, incredibly low motivation. My ADHD was like out of control. I couldn't keep a thought straight. I mean, it was just really drastic. And it felt physical because I didn't have there was no trigger for it. It just happened. And any trigger that I noticed, I'll tell you a little bit more in a minute what I think it was. And it was pretty dramatic. And so, Monday comes around, Tuesday comes around, and I'm feeling really low. I'm not able to work as much as I normally can. Everything felt really hard. My writing practice, I have a writing group that I'm in. I go every day. It's a commitment I made to myself when I joined it back in April that I go every single time. I schedule everything around it. I don't ever schedule anything on top of it. It's sort of a non-negotiable. Very rarely do I have to miss. So I go anyway. Whether I feel like it or not, I go anyway. And that's a big lesson I've learned, is that if I want to get this book written, I have to continue to work on it, whether I feel like it or not, and working on it looks different. But I think I talked about that last week. So anyway, I show up to writing practice, really struggle. I'm at the end of the chapter, and I always struggle end of chapters. I don't know how to wrap it up. And then somehow I get in my head that I have to tell the whole book and the whole resolution of everything I talked about and how I cured everything I talked about, in the last paragraph of the book and the last paragraph of the chapter. And so I always get a little agitated at the end of the chapters. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, I can't. I'm going to come back to this and I move on. So I was at the end of the chapter and I was kind of struggling with that on writing practice. And then I go to my coach, Allison Crow, which if you listen to the podcast, you've heard her on the podcast before. Amazing episode. You should listen to that. And I was talking to her about this, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And she was really resonating too, because she also has a newly diagnosed ADHD like I do. And we were kind of talking about how it feels and how, it's hard to, when it is, how it can be completely debilitating. And, I was just feeling so tired too. And then I remember telling her, I was like, my subconscious is working on something, and I don't know what it is. I was like, I feel like it's doing something. And then so like when I try in my conscious mind to do something different, it's just like, no, I can't, because I'm already working on this other thing. And so it just wouldn't let me do anything else. It was really strange. I just had that feeling, but then I didn't know what it was, because it's my subconscious. You can't see, you can't tell what's going on back there all the time. So I was experiencing that. And then in my call with Allison, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I know what it is. It's my book. I was hearing weird dog noises. That's okay. Okay. It was the book. I was like, oh, it's not the first time this has happened, but sometimes what I'm writing about in the book shows up in my life. Like, for example, I was writing a chapter once about shame, and suddenly I'm noticing shame everywhere around me. I see it everywhere I go. I notice it in people. I notice it in myself. I start to feel it more because I'm thinking about it more. And then when you're writing something about your past, and you want to convey how it felt, and you want to really articulate the impact of how it felt to feel that, you have to, you don't do that with your brain. You don't do that with, this is what I remember it feeling like. It's like, no, you feel it in your body, and then you put yourself into that position, and you feel the sensations in your body, you feel the emotions, you experience it. It's like you relive it, so that when you write it down, it comes from that place, that real place, so that it can come across to the reader or the viewer, if you're talking about art. And so I know, that happened. It's happened before, and I don't know why I didn't notice that it happened again this time, because my chapter was about burnout, and I'm writing about how I was burnt out, how I couldn't work, how my work was causing anxiety, how I stopped doing things like writing and looking at art, and things that were like really core to my foundation. I'm writing about being depressed, and I'm writing about having burnout. And then I am like, why am I feeling so burnt out? And I'm like, oh, it's because I'm writing about it. And so that helped just to recognize it, that was what was happening. And once I recognized it, I was able to give myself a little bit more compassion and grace for it. I mean, I do tend to judge myself a lot. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But that's what was happening. And then had a call with my book coach, Heather, who also is on the podcast, also amazing. And she brings a lot of compassion to the writing process. That's what our podcast was about. And it was also about, that's what her business is. It's like a compassionate approach to writing. And it's a really beautiful process. She's really good at it. And recognizing that there are days like this. There are days where you're irritated. There are days where you're sky high and so excited. And there's days where you can't get anything done. It's every day as a creator is different. And it's about allowing that, and it's about creating the space for that, learning what works for you, and creating that sort of safe place in your creation. So, as I was mentioning in our call, I was like, yep, I was feeling the emotions of the book. I realized that's what it was getting me down. And she was like, I wish I could say that it wasn't going to happen again. She was like, but it's going to happen again pretty much every time. And I was like, oh, good. That's great. Because, I mean, it just, you're going to think about this myth of like this expressing your feelings on the canvas or on paper or whatever. And then it's like, when those feelings leave you, when you express them in writing or on an image, they still are in your body. You're still feeling them. And it's so easy for me to tap into those feelings from the past too, because your body remembers, it's like it remembers how it feels to be anxious and burnt out and depressed and in shame. And like it knows. And so I can put myself back there, but it's how do I get myself back out when I'm done? That is something I really need to focus on and be aware of. Like, that's a question I'm going to ask myself is, in the future, how can I kind of notice this sooner and be prepared for it, and give myself the space I need to recover? Because honestly, it feels really self-indulgent, especially in our culture that is so hyper fixated on productivity. You're not productive. I mean, you're not value if you don't have, if you're not producing. You're not, time spent equals money. And so like if you're spending 5 hours playing Minecraft, which I'm sure I did in, in one sitting in the last few days, like, then you're not a valuable person, and you're being self-indulgent and you're being lazy and all the things. And so it's like, but it's necessary for an artist who is creating something big and powerful and meaningful to care for the repercussions of putting so much of your inner self out onto the page, onto the canvas, onto the dance floor, or whatever it is that your art form. That what art is inherently this human thing, and it is an expression of your humanity. It's an effort to like open yourself up and be seen. It's an effort to help someone else feel seen. It's there's so many reasons for making art, and so many different artists do create art in different ways. But to me, art is an expression of humanity, and humanity is the wide range of feelings and emotions. So I have a quote that I don't think I read yet to you. I read it twice already, but not on this recording. It's from Anne Lamott from Bird by Bird, which is an amazing book about writing. I can't remember if I already said this. It's okay. It's fine. You can hear it twice. If you're hearing it twice, maybe you needed to hear it twice. So anywho, it's a book about writing. Excellent book. There's a lot of fiction writing stuff in there, which wasn't necessarily relevant to me, but it would be, I mean, if you're a writer at all, I think you would find it really a great read. And even you can apply it to art as well. But she says, my writer friends, and they are legion, do not go around beaming with quiet feelings of contentment. Most of them go around with haunted, abused, surprised looks on their faces, like lab dogs on whom very personal deodorant sprays have been tested. And that's really what, like, going back and reading that quote, I just finished the book over the weekend, but going back, I always highlight on my Kindle, which then transfers over to Goodreads, and then I can go back and read through my quotes, which things I highlighted, which I really like to do. But that's really what it felt like. Like, I felt haunted the first half of this week. I felt agitated. I felt like there was something I didn't see and something I didn't know, and it was just really uncomfortable. And yeah, I know now. And then today I finished the chapter, and then I feel great. So, I mean, that's crazy. That's not crazy. It's wild. I'm trying not to say the word crazy so much. Okay. And then there was another great quote that I found. Well, not that I found, that I used when I used to teach abstract expressionism, which was from Mark Rothko. And Mark Rothko is a very misunderstood artist from, a lot of people see his art and they're just like, oh, it's just colors. I can do that. And they roll their eyes. But there is a lot of depth to his work that I think a lot of people don't see. And this quote by Mark Rothko, I love it because it really shows his intentions. And he says, the fact that people break down and cry when confronted with my pictures shows that I can communicate with those basic human emotions. The people who weep before my pictures are having the same religious experience I had when painting them. So, that feeling, he was fully feeling it. And when he was done painting, that feeling just didn't vanish, that it was still there. And so how do artists manage that? And I believe that I can be a happy person. I can be a well-adjusted person and still be an artist. I don't have to be tortured all the time. But yes, there will be moments where I'm tortured, but that I can feel good too. And so that's something I'm thinking about, is how can I strike that balance? And it is something I've been working on my entire life, because I am a creative person. I am a creator. Even when I was building my business at the time, I think I didn't call it being an artist. I didn't even necessarily call it, excuse me, my eye is itching. I didn't necessarily even call it creativity. I called it being smart, but I think I've learned that, like, oh wait, creativity is kind of more what I'm all about. That's a whole other topic, so I'm not going to go there. And then I found one other thing that I was just kind of Googling around, and I found a study that was published in the Psychology of Aesthetics, Creativity, and the Arts journal, and it's called Patterns of Psychological Vulnerabilities and Resources in Artists and Non-Artists. And so they did a test. They found a group of artists. I think they were mostly college instructors. So these were their creative people. And then they found a group of non-creative people. I don't, pulled them from other professions and things, people who don't have any arts training or arts background, people who don't call themselves artists. And they measured what they called psychological vulnerabilities, which are things like anxiety, depression, and stress. And then they measured their psychological resources, which they labeled, or which are like well-being, ego, resilience, and hope. So you've got like the positive side, and then the more sort of and then like negative side, like the quote unquote negative emotions and quote unquote positive emotions, which I think that's a whole thing. I don't know about the term negative emotions for any emotion, but they didn't put negative and positive in this study. But what they found is fascinating, that the artist group had higher incidences of psychological vulnerabilities, more anxiety and more stress. But they also had more evidence of psychological resources. So they had higher resilience and hope and things like that. So not only are they're experiencing the lows, but they're all experiencing the high highs. And so I think that's fascinating. And I think that it's true. Like, if you go from last week to this week, there was one point I was driving down the road last week and I just had this huge smile on my face, and I was like so excited. I was like, this is great. Like, yay art, yay life, yay work. And then like a few days later, I'm like way down. And so it's a trip to go through, those roller coasters of feelings. And I think for a lot of my life, I was trying to shut that out. I was trying to not feel the bad feelings, but I also, in suppressing the bad feelings, suppressed good feelings too. Like, I was scared to show excitement. I was, it was like, I could only stay here because I'll be judged either way. That was a whole other thing, not related to being an artist. So, really fascinating, really is. And it gave me a lot of things to think about in terms of, how do I still show up even though I am experiencing this? How do I soothe myself? How do I care for myself to recover when I am having to go through some rough content? And then what support do I need? I have my my coach, I have my book coach, and I have my therapist. I went back to therapy because of the last incidents of this happening in the book when I was writing about shame. Like that was really hard to get through. And I was like, I think I need more support even. So I started to go see her. So I'm looking forward to seeing her. I haven't talked to her since all of this happened this week. So yeah, how can I get through it? What support do I need? And then yeah, how can I recognize that it's happening and sooner and prepare for it? So I think that was all there. I think there was one. Yeah, I think in my earlier video, I talked about how the stuff I'm writing now is stuff that I haven't really put a story to. I haven't processed fully yet because it's more recent. And so it's been really agitating to kind of go through and make sense of the time that I'm talking about. Find the layers and all of that. Like it's really deep work creating this book. So I would love to hear from you on your thoughts on managing those emotions as an artist, and I think celebrating them too. That's another thing that I want to do, is that I do like the capacity to feel and the capacity to be human and also communicate my humanity. I think is a gift to the world, and I know I have received that gift from so many people. So I hold that I hold that to such a high place of reverence. And so going through the process myself has made me even more connected to the authors of the books I read, the artists of the artworks that I connect with. So that's really cool too. So thank you so much for listening and or watching this video. Hopefully the third time is a charm and everything goes okay with posting this. But I will be back next week or so for another update. So thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.